The bottle in the locked room. The crying would not stop. Amora pressed her silk pillow over her ears, trying to block out the sound that had haunted her mansion for weeks. It was past midnight, and a woman's sobs echoed through the empty corridors like the wail of a tortured spirit. Tonight the crying was louder than ever, desperate, broken. Amora threw off her expensive Egyptian cotton sheet and stepped onto the cold marble floor. Barefoot, she moved down the grand staircase of the mansion Senator Kofi Damba had bought for her. The house was too big, too empty, filled with luxury, but drained of warmth and love. The sound came from the east wing, a part of the house she had never entered. Kofi had told her it was only storage, nothing important. But tonight something pulled her there like an invisible rope around her chest. The hallway felt older here, darker. Her heart pounded as she followed the weeping until she reached a heavy wooden door. The crying came from behind it, muffled, but unmistakably real. She tried the handle. Locked. The crying stopped suddenly, as if whoever was inside knew she was there. "Hello?" Amora whispered. No answer. Fear and curiosity fought inside her. She ran to the kitchen and grabbed the hammer from the toolbox Kofi kept there. Her hands trembled as she returned to the door and struck the old lock again and again until it finally snapped with a rusty screech. The door swung open. Amora stepped into a room that froze her blood. Candles burned everywhere, casting restless shadows on the walls. In the center sat a small table draped in red cloth. On it stood a framed photograph of her own face, smiling with the same hopeful expression she had worn on the day she first came to Kofi's world. But beside the framed photo sat something that made her knees weaken. A thick, clear glass bottle, old and heavy, with a dark iron padlock chained around its neck. Inside the bottle, floating in a dark liquid, was another photograph of her face. The glass warped the image so her smile looked wrong, twisted, grotesque. Amora crawled closer, shaking. Around the table were dozens of bottles, each containing a photograph of a different woman, beautiful women, young women, each smiling that same hopeful smile. Some bottles were dusty, as if they had been there for years. Then the smell hit her, a metallic stench like old blood mixed with something rotten and sweet. Gold bowls filled with dark red liquid sat between the bottles, and strange symbols were carved into the wooden table beneath the cloth. Amora scrambled backward, her scream trapped in her throat. She had stumbled into something evil, something that suddenly explained everything. Why she had not been able to have children despite 3 years of trying. Why Kofi visited only once a week. Why she felt hollow despite the wealth around her. She was not Kofi's cherished woman. She was his prisoner. Her life, her destiny, was locked away like a spirit in a bottle, slowly drained. Years earlier. Years ago, when Amora was still young and hopeful, she lived in Willowbend village with her carpenter husband Jalen, and their 2 sons, Tariq and Eli. Life was hard, but honest. Jalen built furniture and repaired roofs with his hands. Amora sold bread and vegetables in the market. They had little money, but they had love. Everything changed the day Kofi Damba came to Willowbend during his election campaign. Amora was washing clothes by the stream when her son Tariq ran to tell her the village had an important visitor. Curious, she followed him to the village square. Kofi was unlike any man she had ever seen. While the men of Willowbend were weathered by work and poverty, Kofi gleamed like polished gold. His suit was perfect. His shoes shone like mirrors. And when he smiled, something stirred in Amora, something that had been sleeping for years. "My beloved people," Kofi called to the crowd, "I have come to end your suffering. When I am elected, every village will have electricity, good roads, and clean water." The crowd cheered, but Amora barely heard them. Kofi's eyes found hers across the square, and she felt as if he could see straight through her. After the speech, he approached her personally. "What is your name, beautiful sister?" "Amora," she whispered, suddenly ashamed of her faded dress and work-worn hands. "Amora," he repeated, taking her hands in both of his. "You deserve far more than this hard life." Then Jalen appeared, suspicious and protective. But Kofi's words had already planted a seed in Amora's heart, a hunger for more than her simple life could offer. Over the following weeks, Kofi sent messengers with gifts and letters. He promised a life in the city, fine clothes, a beautiful house, money, comfort, everything she had ever quietly wished for. Amora knew Kofi had a wife and a family. But he told her she would be his special woman, the one who truly understood him. He painted a life so dazzling that Willowbend began to feel like a cage. Then the final temptation came. Their youngest son, Eli, fell sick with fever. The village healer could do nothing, and they had no money for a doctor in the city. Amora watched her child burning with fever and felt helpless rage at poverty. That night, Kofi's messenger came, not only with a letter, but a bundle of money. Enough for the best doctors. Enough to save Eli. Honorable Kofi heard about your son's illness, the messenger said. He wants to help. But he hopes you will consider his offer seriously. A woman like you should not watch her children suffer because of poverty. Amora used the money to save Eli's life. And in her heart, she felt she now owed Kofi everything. When he sent a car for her the following week, she climbed in without looking back. She told herself she was doing it for her children, to give them a better future. Jalen begged her not to leave. His heartbreak shook the doorway. But Amora's mind was made up. She was tired of hunger. Tired of struggling. Tired of watching her children suffer. At first, Kofi kept his promises. He installed her in a beautiful mansion in the city of Goldmere, bought her expensive clothes and jewelry, gave her a car and driver. For the first time in her life, Amora lived like a queen. But luxury came with a price she hadn't understood. Kofi visited only once a week, spending the rest of his time with his real family. Amora was left alone in a huge house, surrounded by shining things but starved of love. She had maids and drivers, but no friends. She had wealth, but no purpose. Loneliness crushed her. Worse was the guilt that ate her every day. She had abandoned her children. She tried to send money back, but Jalen refused it. He moved away with the boys, too ashamed to stay where everyone knew his wife had left him for another man. Years passed. Amora tried desperately to have a child with Kofi, believing a baby would fill the emptiness. But month after month, her womb stayed empty. Doctors said she was healthy, no medical reason she couldn't conceive. Yet Amora felt the truth was darker than medicine. And now, staring at her own face trapped in that bottle, she understood. Kofi had not made her his mistress. He had made her his victim. The pastor. Amora ran from the cursed room as if the devil chased her. She threw on whatever clothes she could find and fled into the night, stopping only when she reached a small church at the edge of town. Pastor Adeyemi opened the door in his nightclothes, eyes wide with concern when he saw her tear-streaked face. "My child, what has happened?" Amora collapsed into a pew, shaking. "Pastor, I need to tell you something terrible. Something evil." "Tell me everything," he said gently. "The Lord is listening." Amora confessed it all, how Kofi had come to her village years ago, how she left her husband and children for wealth, how she could never become pregnant, and how tonight she heard crying, broke into a locked room, and saw the bottles. "There was a table covered in red cloth," she said. "My photograph in a frame, and beside it a bottle with a heavy padlock. Inside was another picture of me floating in dark liquid that smelled like old blood. And there were dozens of other bottles with other women's pictures." Pastor Adeyemi's face grew grave. He closed his eyes and prayed silently. "What does it mean?" Amora pleaded. "Why would he do this?" "My daughter," he said softly, "what you have described is an ancient form of spiritual bondage. This man has not only taken your body and given you material things, he has captured your destiny." Amora's blood ran cold. "The bottle sealed with a padlock," he continued, "is how dark practitioners trap a person's future, their luck, their ability to bear children, their life force. When you accepted his gift and abandoned your home, you entered a spiritual contract. He claims ownership over what was meant to be yours." "But I never agreed," Amora cried. "Sometimes agreements are made without words," the pastor said sadly. "When greed leads our choices, we open doors we do not understand." Amora wept bitterly. "How do I break free? How do I get my life back?" Pastor Adeyemi shook his head. I have never faced darkness like this. But I know this, those who strike such bargains often find that everything they touch afterward turns toward destruction. It spreads into work, love, relationships. Helping you may bring suffering to others. Is there no hope? Only God knows, he said. But the harm done, to your family, to your spirit, will not be easily undone. Prepare yourself for a hard road. Amora spent the night praying until dawn. When the sun rose, she knew she could not return to the mansion. She gathered the little money she had hidden away and bought a bus ticket back to Willowbend. Return to Willowbend. When she arrived, the village looked smaller than she remembered, poorer, more desperate, but also real in a way the mansion never had. She walked to where her old home had stood. It was gone. The land was overgrown with weeds. Neighbors avoided her, whispering. Word had already spread, the woman who abandoned her family had returned. Amora rented a small room from an elderly woman who didn't recognize her and tried to begin again. She tried selling vegetables in the market, but every day her produce rotted before evening. She tried sewing, but the machine broke whenever she touched it. Men who showed interest in her suddenly fell ill or lost their jobs. Families who hired her found their belongings mysteriously breaking. Children fell sick after eating food she prepared. Soon the village whispered that she was cursed. Mothers pulled their children away. Shop owners refused to sell to her. Amora realized Pastor Adeyemi had been right, the curse followed her. Then a message came that chilled her bones. A young man appeared at her door with a folded note. From Honorable Kofi, he said, and vanished before she could ask anything. Amora opened it with trembling hands. My dear Amora, I see you have been looking at what does not concern you. I do not need you anymore. I already got what I wanted from you. Enjoy the rest of your life. Kofi. He had known she would find the room. He wanted her to. Her escape had been part of his plan. Looking for her family. Desperate to make amends, Amora searched for Jalen and her sons. She learned Jalen had moved to Goldmere after she left, unable to bear the shame of staying. Using her last money, she traveled to the city. It took weeks, but she found the truth. Jalen had become successful. Heartbreak had driven him to work harder than ever. His furniture business grew into one of the most respected in the city. He lived in a large home in an expensive neighborhood with his new wife, Mira, a kind woman who helped him heal. They had 2 children together. Amora stood outside the gates and watched Jalen arrive, wearing fine clothes, stepping out of a shining car. Mira sat beside him, calm and graceful, carrying the confidence of a woman who built a life with him. Amora's heart shattered. This was the life she might have had, if she had not traded it for glitter. When Jalen saw her at the gate, his face hardened. The love that once lived in his eyes was replaced by cold distance. What are you doing here? He asked without leaving the car. Jalen, please, Amora begged. I came to apologize. I want to make things right. Make things right, his voice turned bitter. You abandoned your children. You left us for luxury. Now you return? I was foolish. Selfish. Please forgive me. Jalen looked at her for a long moment. Amora didn't see hatred, she saw pity. Amora, we don't need you anymore. We built a life without you. My sons call Mira their mother now. They're doing well. Tariq is studying engineering. Eli is in another country on scholarship. They don't need the woman who walked away. Please, let me see them. Let me explain. No, Jalen said, final. You made your choice years ago. Live with it. The gates clanged shut behind him like a coffin closing. Amora stood there until dark, hoping he might return. He didn't. A life of wandering. Amora returned to Willowbend more broken than when she left. She tried to rebuild again, but the curse made everything impossible. Crops withered near her. Animals fell sick when she passed. Even the weather seemed to turn bad when she stepped outside. Villagers stopped whispering and began shouting. They blamed her for every misfortune: sick children, failed crops, struggling businesses. She brought evil back, they cried. She made a deal with darkness. Amora tried to defend herself, tried to explain she was a victim too. But who would believe her? To them, she was the woman who chose wealth over love. Men tried to court her, drawn by the last traces of her fading beauty, but disaster followed every attempt at love. One man lost his job the day after their first date. Another fell and broke his leg after walking her home. A third man's shop burned after buying her dinner. Word spread quickly: Amora was cursed in love as well as life. No one would hire her. No family would associate with her. Finally, the village chief called a meeting. "This woman brings bad luck," he declared. "Since she returned, nothing goes well. Our children are sick. Crops fail. Businesses struggle. She must leave." "Where can I go?" Amora asked, voice breaking. "This is my home." "You gave up the right to call this place home when you abandoned your family," the chief said coldly. "You are no longer welcome." That night, Amora packed her few belongings and left Willowbend for the last time. She wandered from town to town, city to city, a ghost with no shelter. Everywhere she tried to walk, misfortune followed. Families who hired her fell apart. Customers who ate her food grew ill. People who helped her found their lives collapsing. So Amora learned to avoid closeness. She aged quickly under the weight of guilt, loneliness, and the curse that clung to her like smoke. Her beauty faded. Her health declined. Her spirit broke. Some say she still wanders, a warning walking the earth. Others say she died alone in some forgotten corner of the world, unmourned, unremembered. The mansion still cries. But in Goldmere, where Kofi Dambe continues his dark walk, in that mansion with the hidden room full of bottles, Amora's photograph still floats in its glass prison. Distorted by the dark liquid, her smile is twisted into eternal regret. And sometimes late at night, visitors to that mansion swear they hear the sound of a woman crying, not fresh tears, but the dry, endless sobs of a soul who learned too late that some prices are too terrible to pay. The bottle remains sealed. The padlock remains strong. And somewhere between the living and the dead, Amora continues paying for the moment she chose luxury over loyalty, and ambition over the family that loved her unconditionally. Moral lesson: be careful of gifts that demand your soul in return. Not every offer that looks like a help is love, some are traps. When greed guides the heart, it can break families, destroy trust, and open doors to suffering that money cannot close. True wealth is not what you own, it's who you refuse to betray. Folktale Style, thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel.